Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 27th, 2024. Well, the world is going through a very turbulent period, which is not surprising because we've reached the end of an old era. The question for all of us is what comes next, and that's what I'm going to be addressing because many of you have been sending me questions asking me basically that. What do we do? How do we get out of this collapsing order? The oligarchy is committed to using war, regime change, unleashing chaos, and so on to maintain a collapsing order. If they succeed, we all lose. The Malthusian depopulation is what they have in mind, to create a Hobbesian jungle, a war of each against all. But there's a time now for the emergence of new ideas, which are not really new. The policy based on the sanctity of human life, the creative potential of every child, the idea that we live and express our love of our fellow human beings, that we cooperate for mutual benefit. That's what we have to think about when we look at the world and say, what's going to come next? So is there still hope that we can achieve this? Well, the hope comes from an understanding of what Lyndon LaRouche developed with the principle of physical economy. That the human mind is capable of discovering ideas about the nature of the laws of the universe, the ordering principles. How is it that we can improve the conditions of life for all people? Is that possible or not? Is the world overpopulated, or can we produce more to enable everyone to have a full life? And that's from LaRouche's idea of physical economy, that it's through scientific and technological progress and through an education that inspires creative activity based on this principle of love for your fellow human beings. That's the way that you can escape the otherwise existential crisis being imposed by the collapse of an old order. And key to that is the return to the principles of classical beauty, the idea of a classical renaissance in which each generation discovers the best ideas and most beautiful ideas of the past and incorporates them into their own ability to look at the world and figure out what must be done. Now, the Bidens, the Starmers, the Trudeaus, the Macrons, they're stuck in a world of imperial geopolitics. For them, the world is one of a zero-sum game. Your gain is my loss, and I have to therefore make sure I gain and you lose. That's the world that we live in. That's the world of the chaos of the war in Ukraine against Russia, of the Israeli genocide against Palestinians. But it's time to turn the page, and the possibility for that exists. We've just had a temporary reprieve from the immediate danger of nuclear war. The Zelensky demand, which was backed by NATO, for the Ukraine to be able to use US and British weapons to target sites deep in Russia, that was rejected once again yesterday by President Biden, or whoever tells Biden what to do. Now, the background to that is what President Putin did with the announcement of a change in the Russian nuclear doctrine. And I'm going to read you what Helga Zepp-LaRouche said yesterday in her discussion, her weekly dialogue with me, which will be attached in the description section of today's update. She said that de facto, Putin has really made the red line so clear for everyone to see that if there would be even an attack from a country with only conventional weapons, but backed by a country which has nuclear weapons, in other words, Ukraine backed by the United States, and if there would be a massive air attack, that would give Russia freely the right, according to its new doctrine, to answer that with nuclear weapons. Now again, she said he's clearly referring to Ukraine and the United States' support for that. Now, then she goes on to say, so we are on the edge. And I can only say that these Western commentators, like in Germany and Britain, who are basically still saying Putin is bluffing, these people are so absolutely out of their minds that one can only say we are really in danger of being governed by madmen and the media which are completely in the service of such madmen. So the only answer at this point is broad public discussion. Don't leave policy to the living dead, like Biden and Blinken. It's up to the citizens of nations, to fight for their sovereign development, for the creativity of the future generation, and to reject the zero-sum game of a Hobbesian universe. Now, after this attempt by Blinken and Lammy, the British foreign minister, to convince Biden on September 13th to give Ukraine the go-ahead to use long-range missiles to target Russia. And then again, Biden telling Zelensky yesterday that that's not going to happen, at least not now. As I said, it's a reprieve. What's interesting is what Putin's spokesman Peskov said about this. He said that Moscow has offered talks to Washington on the need for strategic stability between the U.S. and Russia. Talks should be launched as soon as possible. We have not received a response from the Americans yet, unquote. Well, that's what's necessary. Diplomacy, dialogue, the assumption that you're dealing with other human beings who love their children, who love their families, who look forward to a future, who see the world as something of beauty to be preserved, as opposed to be pillaged for the sake of a handful of billionaires. Now, Helga then went on to discuss what Putin said in his address to Energy Week Forum in Moscow. She said he highlighted the role of the BRICS coalition of nations as the main driver of growth in the world. He described a new multipolar development model being formed, one concentrated neither in Europe nor in North America. Major growth will be concentrated in the BRICS nations and those countries that would like to join our group. Those that see the prospect of equal partnership that takes national interests into account. And she said many nations heard Putin's comments on this and are embracing them. She then said to Europe and North America, to the citizens of Europe and the United States and Canada, there must be finally the long-needed discussion of where we are at and why this present policy of trying to maintain hegemony, when that hegemony is clearly already out the window, that has to be reversed. And we have to put a completely different approach on the agenda, such as what we've been discussing for almost 3 years now. A new security and development architecture, now. And that means a return to the best traditions of every nation, because every nation has at one time or another experienced a renaissance, a development. And the fact that many nations have had that crushed by the post-15th century imperial policy doesn't mean that those countries are unworthy or incapable of development. It's up to us to make sure that every child born has an opportunity to experience the creative potential that they have inherently within them. That is the image and likeness of God that exists in every single person born. And that requires a special kind of love and courage. And that's what we're called upon now to deliver. And that's why it's so important to return to the idea of the inherent, innate beauty of the human being with the potential to act for the good for all other people. Does that mean that there's not evil in the world? Well, look at what people like Blinken and Biden and Harris are trying to do. But we can't allow the human race to be defined by those aberrant creatures. Instead, what's necessary is for us to bring out the best in ourselves and to use that to master this idea of the unfolding of creative potential of every human being as the basis for increasing wealth to all people. And that's something to be fought for. And so I've included a link in the description section to the weekly International Peace Coalition call that takes place today at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you can't make it, it'll be archived so you can listen to it later. And then also the dialogue I did with Helga Zepp-LaRouche yesterday. So with that, let me wish you a good weekend of study, of thinking, of creativity, and of loving. Thank you. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.